Hi guys, welcome back to Coffee with Megan, where I chat to people in the fashion industry who are using their platform for good. Today I'm going to talk to Annie Wells. She is the founder and owner of Simply Suzette. And Simply Suzette was created not only to talk about sustainable fashion, but mainly for denim lovers and people who want to learn more about how to make the right choices in the denim world. And we're going to talk about all the problems with the denim industry, which was an area I previously didn't know anything about. And it has a lot of negative impacts on the environment, and she will explain some of them. And also the brands to look out for that are doing it right and where you should shop your denim now. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Annie.
Hi, Megan.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah. We are obviously doing this via Zoom call because we were all locked down around the world. Could you tell everyone where you're calling from today?
I am in Toronto, Canada, so a little bit farther away from you than usual.
Yeah, it's a shame we can't meet in person, but one day. So you work in the sustainable fashion industry and you have an amazing website where you sell a certain type of clothing. I'll let you tell everyone what that is, and you advocate for a certain niche area of the sustainable fashion world. And could you tell everyone what that is and why you ended up in this area?
Yeah, for sure. So what I do with my website, it's called Simply Suzette. I curate sustainable denim brands, and I also write about different mills, manufacturers, any company within the denim world that is actually making a positive change in the industry. And so with that, I kind of came to this point in my life because I've always loved jeans. I've always just been kind of a jeans and a tee kind of girl. And during my fashion program, I actually learned that jeans were the worst garment to produce besides leather. And I thought that was absolutely absurd. Because, we know that leather industry is very, very harmful. But denim, I was like, denim is such a global garment. Everyone wears it. I had no idea that it was so harmful for the people and the planet making it. To be honest, I got more into the ethics side, for the social responsibility side of it first, and then the environmental side kind of just went hand in hand. But yeah, so I just was so concerned that some of the methods that denim used to make fashionable pieces were so harmful for the people and the environment making it. But there were a few brands out there doing things differently. And so I started researching what their processes were and learned that, why aren't more people doing this? Why don't more people try and save the resources that denim uses? Because denim is a very resource intensive garment to make. It uses, like, traditionally, my aha moment was kind of, it uses 2,000 gallons of water to produce one pair of jeans, which is absolutely absurd when you think there's about 50 billion jeans produced a year. So it was absolutely absurd to me, like how resource intensive it was, but there were options to make it better, but people weren't doing that.
Yeah.
So my goal with Simply Suzette was kind of to curate a selection of denim brands, so to make it easier for the consumer to make the better decision and buy a pair of jeans that still looked and felt like designer denim, but wasn't hurting the people or the planet making it. So that's kind of where my journey came from. And also I was working in the fashion industry a bit before, and my goal was to be a head buyer one day, but the company I was working for kept bringing in lower quality stuff. And I'm like, what is happening in this? What is going on here? And so I just was so curious to know, like, the brands that were doing things better. And I've also grown up in kind of a philanthropic family, so I feel like that also added to it as well. So yeah, that's kind of where I came from.
And you have Simply Suzette, and you also have then the Diligent Denim side where you have a blog and you write more article-based stuff. What came first? Was it Simply Suzette and sourcing ethically made jeans, or was it your blog side and then you started promoting the brands that are doing it right?
Yeah, so I actually started curating the jeans first, and I used to hold inventory in them actually, and I would do pop-ups around the city, and that's kind of how I was selling the jeans as well as online. But to my findings, when I started selling them in the pop-ups, asking people their knowledge base on sustainability and whatnot, I found that there was just like a complete lack of education. Nobody, or not even education, awareness. There was no awareness at all. So that moment kind of made me realize, okay, if I'm curating a selection of jeans for people that don't care, then what's the point? I need to educate people. And I kind of made it my mission to expose, though I say behind the scenes, but like I kind of made it my mission to learn the ins and outs of the supply chain and expose that to the consumer, because I was finding there's just such a lack of connection between your clothing and when you're buying something. People have no idea the process that has been going on behind it, let alone how many hands have touched the Gucci pair of jeans before they reach your hands. So that was kind of my mission, to educate people and create awareness. And now people are becoming aware, and it's great that we have people like you using your platform for good as well and creating more awareness. And I think what needs to happen is just continue to drive that conversation with consumers and let everyone become aware, and then they can make their own choices.
I do think it's so true how far removed we are from knowing the processes that goes into it, because before I started this journey of making these videos, I really had no idea of how harmful, ethically as well, not just environmentally, the fashion industry is to people, how it's harming people. And it wasn't even something that passed my mind before. And denim wasn't something I had really thought about or knew how bad it is for the environment and for people. And could you explain some of the negatives of the denim industry and what harm it is having?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it just a second ago, but my aha moment was that 2,000 gallons of water. And so not let alone it, most of that comes from growing the cotton. And since jeans the majority of them have been cotton based, that's changing a bit now. But so it's extremely resource intensive from the initial stage, from actually growing the fibers that go into your jean all the way through to the end. It's water uses in every stage, and also then chemicals are added to it as well. The iconic blue that denim is it comes from indigo, and unfortunately indigo is just like a problem right now. It's actually like there's natural indigo, and that's where originally the blue color came from, but over time, obviously with mass production, people started using synthetic indigos. We've now moved to powdered indigo, which is better. But I mean liquid indigo, which is better, but we still see people using powdered indigo. And I don't understand, that's another thing. I don't understand why, if the options are available that are better, let's start to use them. But yeah, so indigo is just a huge problem. It's very chemical intensive, water intensive. And there are companies out there working on different alternatives to it, but they're not technically indigo then per se. So it's interesting that jeans have this iconic blue hue, but its inherent indigo is so bad for the planet and the people. So it's kind of not like paradoxical almost, but yeah. So I don't know, but there's a lot of steps in the denim supply chain. Would you like me to go through all of them?
Yeah, go ahead. I'd really love to know some.
Okay. So
nothing about
first,
supply chain.
Okay, yeah. So first, it's so cool to actually know that there are farmers growing our cotton that's in our jean, right? And there are ways that they can use water more efficiently as well, and also by using organic cottons and whatnot too. That means we're not using chemicals there for pesticides use, and that means we're not harming the land that cotton is grown on as well, and that land can be continued to use for food and other resources as well for the farmer to make money off of as well. So that's the first stage. It's just growing the fibers that go in your jean. The second stage would be spinning those fibers into actual yarns, so that then those are what your jeans are made out of. But first, then they're dipped into the indigo. And what happens is these yarns are just literally dipped in boxes in and out of indigo dye. And these boxes are massive vats of water and chemicals. So that's what it goes through. It's going through a chemical and water intensive process when we're dyeing the yarns. Then when the yarns are dyed, we make the fabric. So it's all woven together, and that's kind of what your jeans are made out of. Then we cut and sew them. And then after that, this is another problem area the denim industry is facing. It's the finishing stages. You know, we all kind of like our vintage looks and like the washed looks, and that's kind of what is popular right now, but unfortunately that just takes a lot more water and sometimes chemicals too. It used to, well, some people are still using it, but it's called PP spray, which is a toxic bleach substance. And that's how we originally were getting those nice fades and whiskers and proper discoloration on your jeans. But that's extremely toxic for the workers spraying it. And even if you're in a manufacturing facility, you can see people that are spraying this bright pink, like bleach all over the jeans, and they're wearing these masks, and you just know it's not good for them. So yeah, it's the finishing stages. A lot of the times that's where people think a bulk of the water comes from as well. And so there's been new technologies to save on that. But actually the bulk of the water comes from growing the fiber and then post-consumer purchase. So it's when you're actually taking care of your own jeans, that's where a lot of the water comes from too. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, that's kind of like a very quick summary of the denim supply chain.
I read something as well, I think it was on your website, saying you can tell the what's in fashion, what colors in fashion by the look of the water around China or something at the time.
Yeah, that's an insane stat. That's from a movie. That's called from a movie called I think it was either River Blue or The True Cost. It was either one of those movies. Those are both great resources to learn more about this stuff. But yeah, like sometimes you can see Google Images pictures of the rivers in China, sometimes bright purple or bright fuchsia, because that was going to be the next hot color for the season. And these facilities don't have waste treatment or treatment facilities at all. So they're just basically dumping their dyes and toxic substances into the rivers. And that's why that's happening.
Wow. I really didn't know this. And side question, with denim, if it was purely made of cotton and it didn't have any, say, elastic materials put in, would it be biodegradable? Would denim then?
Yeah, technically it is. So I'm actually writing an article that's coming out on July 10th about that, because it's very confusing. There's not actually a lot of regulation around the term biodegradability in fashion. So a lot of people can just say that if it is a natural fiber, but the problem is they might have added a dye to it or a finishing process that isn't biodegradable. And so even though you are using a natural fiber and it will disintegrate, you might be leaving toxic residue. So the term biodegradable and compostable, I know people use interchangeably, but compostable actually means that you're adding nutrients back into the soil when it biodegrades. So I encourage people to look for compostable materials and certifications rather than just biodegradable, because it still could be leaving toxic residue. But it is not going to end up, you're not going to see a piece of water bottle in the forest for a long time if it's biodegradable.
Yeah. And do you have a term? How would you define sustainable denim? Do you have something that fits? Because sustainability still, everyone has a different term, because I don't think it's completely sustainable. But what would you use sustainable denim? What would go under that for you?
Yeah, like you said, there's so many definitions. Everybody kind of has their own interpretation of what sustainability means. To me personally, won't go into like all the details of all the other ones, but personally, I mean, it's lost its meaning. I think we need to develop new terminology around it. Like when we talk about sustainability, are you talking about environmental sustainability? Are you talking about economic sustainability? Are you talking about ethical sustainability? So I think there needs to be some new terminology created, but sustainability means to sustain. And I think that we need to sustain the people, the planet, and profit in a holistic way. I think that's what sustainability in denim means. There are some great examples in the denim industry that are taking a really holistic approach to production and business in general. And they're using their businesses as tools for good, which is so cool to me, because it's so cool to see that denim can be used as a power for good, if you take the right steps. And Patagonia is another great example. An interview with the founder, he was saying that every time they made a better decision that would benefit their employees or the planet, it resulted in an increase in their bottom line as well. So, I think for me, it means really looking at every step in your supply chain and weighing the trade-offs, because like we said nobody can be perfect. There's no perfection. So just looking at what the trade-offs are, and yeah.
Patagonia is always like an idol company to me. I love everything they do, and their mission for just being good, like you say, and it hasn't sacrificed for them in making an amazing company. And I think that it kind of goes on to you have a line on your blog where you say you don't have to sacrifice ethics for aesthetics. So have you found that to be more true in recent times? I think maybe with vintage style coming into play, but you haven't found, I think many people have in their mind like sustainability means such granola and not like so cool, but I don't think that's true anymore. Do you?
No, I really don't think that's true. I think it was true like a few years ago. It was a lot of linen, hemp, and neutrals, because I think more and more people are starting to also experiment with different dyes, like natural dyes, and they're getting brighter colors and brighter pigments. There's a great company called Pangaea. That sweatsuit company, they're a really great company to look at in the colors they produce. But it's not this neutral kind of like granola fashion anymore that is sustainability. You can have anything you want in a sustainable way. So it's just my bit is that you can't shop your way to sustainability. It really has to be like a mental shift. I really like to say to buy in with intention, and if you're going to keep that product for a really long time, then great, buy it. It makes you happy, buy it. But just make sure you're buying with intention, and making sure you're really going to use it, because there are options out there now, especially with resale, right? Like I think I actually saw a stat recently that a lot of people will look, I don't remember the exact percentage, but a lot of people now look for what they're looking for secondhand before they will buy it new. That's really cool. Like that's really cool. Yeah. I think so.
And it gives you more, you're more okay as well if you are going to buy something new and it costs a bit extra, at least the resale afterwards. I know I sell a lot of my clothes now to real or vintage stores and yeah, it's great to see that having an afterlife, and it feels good afterwards once you're no longer wanted and you get some money for it. It feels great.
Exactly. It's a win for everyone.
I really like on Simply Suzette, you don't just speak about the problems, but you tell people the things to look out for, that if they are looking to buy new denim, some of the processes that are better. For example, like plants that use recycled water. What are some of the better ways for producing denim?
Yeah, so like I said, water was a big issue. So a lot of the companies that are using water recycling plants are great. Some of them actually have reverse osmosis systems on site. So there's one facility I know you can actually even drink the water after it's processed, which is insane, because in traditional ways that water would be, they would just go out into the world and contaminate the surrounding areas. So it's really cool to see plants that are using a lot of technologies that reduce the water. So in the finishing stages, for example, there's ozone gas. So it's O3. I'm not O2. I'm not a scientist, but ozone gas, ozone gas, it somehow it will react with the indigo dye in the washing machine without any water. I think it's like 2 to 3 cups of water versus the thousands of gallons of water. And it will eat at the indigo. And so it will actually start to get those washed and vintage looks without using the actual amount of water that used to wash away the indigo. This actually kind of eats away at it somehow. So that's really cool. And people do put that on their website. I know some brands, they do mention when they're using ozone gas. Another technology is using lasers. There are these really cool videos. I can send you some after, but basically they're high intensity lasers that they burn through the indigo. So those beautiful with whiskers and fades on jeans, those will actually they'll etch them out with the laser rather than using the PP spray that I was talking about before. So that saves not only chemicals and water, it also saves time. It's really efficient. I didn't try it myself. I had a technician do it for me, but I tried a little Suzette in laser on a jean. And it literally took less than 1 second. It was like, Suzette was done. And I was like, wow, I didn't even see that happen. So it's also really efficient to be using that. And those are things I tell consumers to look out for, because the other things on more of the manufacturer and mill side, I feel like people aren't too concerned about, but I do write about them still because they're interesting to know. And if people want to know, then I'm making that information available. But sorry, go.
Okay. No, I was going to say, do you find brands, I guess if that's their whole ethos of their brand, but do you think they make it that information readily available enough for consumers to find, or can it be tough sometimes to find it?
I think it's really hard to find it.
Yeah.
It's starting to change now, but brands just didn't put a lot of information on their website. And I think nowadays consumers need to know the truth. We're at a point where people are becoming aware, and we can't really trust what people say unless people are being transparent in what they're doing. And with that, I think that brands really need to be putting all that information on their website for the people that do want to go and look. But at the moment, it is not readily available. And there are only a few brands that are really making that information accessible to people. So
it's tough when they say like ethically made denim or something, but you don't know all the processes, so it's hard to always let the consumer make the right choice if they don't have all the information.
Exactly.
And would you say that we have to accept is it a higher price tag just going to be like something we have to start accepting, or what is your thoughts on that? I think it might be something, if we have the privilege to accept, I guess we might have to start accepting.
Yeah, I think this one's like a tricky question. I think the people that are fortunate enough to be able to buy the products more sustainably with a higher price tag, that they should. I also do think like there's a lot of technologies that are still new that these brands are using, and so they're more expensive than the traditional ways of manufacturing. But if more people started to use these technologies, the cost would go down, and then and thus the cost for consumers would also go down or remain like neutral. The price wouldn't change. But I also think that we have to kind of go back to this mentality change bit. We have to go back to saving up for an item. You know, we back in the day, our parents and our grandparents, they used to save their paychecks for months and months to buy those pair of boots or the pair of jeans. And you know, I remember talking to someone being like, I used to save my money for 6 months to buy my pair of jeans, and I was so scared once I got when I wore those ones down, because I knew I had to save another 6 months to buy the next pair. So I would take care of my jeans really well because I knew I had to save so long to buy the next pair. I know we're in a world where convenience is, you know, it trumps everything, and fashion is a way of expressing creativity. It's a way of bringing joy to our lives. So I don't think it needs to necessarily go back to that we need to save our money for 6 months. But I do think there are just ways of going about sustainably differently. And maybe, you know, what I started doing, and because I did see a higher price tag, I started thrifting more and buying vintage more at first. And that's kind of how I first got into it. But I do think that yes, right now, there is going to be a higher price tag than, for example, fast fashion. But there's one brand called Boyish Jeans, and their jeans are they're greatly priced. They're pretty, so their companies are working on it. Boyish Jeans. Yeah, like there are companies out there that are working on it. They're working on it. It's just going to take some time.
And I guess these companies can't change until they see, well, they should, but I guess until they see consumers also wanting that, I guess it's a hard balance before, like, who do you blame? The companies that
so hard.
Yeah, it's hard because I guess it also should take some initiative for them to have the money to then change to these more expensive processes that they could make on a bigger scale. And I heard in a recent interview you did, you felt a little bit discouraged in terms of your mission recently, and trying to get people to change. But then more recently, with maybe, I'm guessing with the current situation of the world, is that when you've seen more of a positive shift?
Yeah, honestly, I will say, yeah, that interview I think I was talking about, I was back in October that I was feeling a little discouraged just because it, I still found people just didn't care. Like even talking to my friends and everything, they're like, I know Annie, but like this is just so much more convenient, you know? And like it's just like I was discouraged. I just really didn't think consumers were going to change. And even though the industry was working so hard to come up with all of these solutions, they're not going to matter if consumers don't want them. Right. So it's kind of scary. It's like, it's true. Like, who do you blame? Because consumers create the demand, but the industry is creating the products, and the brands too. They're the ones that make the decisions on what technologies and what fibers they're using. So it's really hard. I think it's like a three-way dance that needs to happen. But yeah, so I kind of forget the first bit of the
No, it's
question.
okay. But you were saying that maybe now you're feeling you are seeing more of a change
Oh
and
yeah,
taking more interest.
yeah. So I think now people have had the time to realize that they don't need so much stuff. Like I do truly think that a shift is happening right now and things are changing, but it's just going to take time. Like we're not going to see a change tomorrow when this all end, or you know, like COVID ends and everything. But I do think this time has given people to take some time to also educate themselves, and all of the global injustices too that are going on throughout the world also add to it. I think people are just starting to think more about things and be more curious about, okay, I don't just take this front and set, like I'm not just taking this face value anymore. I'm curious to know what actually happened behind the scenes. So I do think that it is going to have a positive change eventually.
I do think so too. I think this time has given us, well, this time on our hands where we've all been stuck inside and we've had the time to read up more, has brought us closer to these processes that we maybe just didn't have time to even think about before. We thought our lives were so fast and we're just buying stuff. You just don't think about it. Well, that's my personal experience. And suddenly I'm slowing down and I'm like, wait, I should think, what happens to this when I'm done with this? What happens to the people making it? And yeah, I'm hoping that will make a long lasting change. But is there any fact that you personally heard or you tell people that seem to make a long lasting effect on them to make a change? Is it if it's in terms of denim or anything sustainability related?
The power of one, that phrase is like what I really try to leave with people, because it's, people think that they their choices don't matter, and like, oh, okay, if I buy this plastic water bottle from Starbucks, or this plastic cup, this plastic coffee mug from Starbucks, millions of other people are doing the same thing. Why does it matter if one gets added to it? But say everybody was like, okay, my choice actually does matter. Or not even everyone. What if half the world was like, okay, my choices do matter. So I think that's something I really try to leave with people, because it will make a bigger difference if everybody makes small changes and works towards being better, than if only a couple people or a few people in the world are making massive changes. So I really, and also one thing, the disconnect is something I really think gets people as well, when I'm like, look, those pair of jeans actually one person didn't just make that. At least 40 people had a part in making that jean, and it also took 2,000 gallons of water to make. It took a kilogram of cotton to make as well. So there are just all of these things that I try and push a little bit people to think just a little bit more behind the scenes. And that's what really creates the lasting change, I think. It's when they become or feel connected to their clothing. I used to say the 2,000 gallons of water stat, but now, to me, honestly, statistics don't do much for me, because there's hardly any data in the fashion industry. We're just collecting data now, so these stats they're not too powerful to me anymore. It's more, I think, the mental shift that I'd like to see happen in people, and that's why I kind of focus on the disconnect now.
I really like the power of one terminology as well, because I do think that's a lot of people's problems. They're like, oh, everyone's getting a cup. Like, what happens if I have a couple a day? It's not going to make a difference, or whatever it is. But it really does. And yeah, I think that's a really cool one.
Like we need everyone to buy your reusable mugs now. There's a stat in Toronto. It's like there's It's every day. It's the Eiffel. It's like everybody in Toronto drinks enough coffee to amount to the size of the Eiffel Tower or something like that every day. So that's
It's
insane.
insane. And people really don't think about it because they think those cups are paper, but they're lined with plastic and the plastic lid. And yeah, it really, all these things do need to change, and we need to make more people more aware. I just think it's the awareness that's the problem.
Awareness. Mm-hmm.
And so you have, going back to your site, and you sell denim and you sell vintage denim. And I thought it was interesting to know, how do you go about sourcing vintage denim for your site? What's something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vintage is, I will say, honestly, I think vintage is the best way to shop just because you're not producing anything new. So I've always kind of curated a vintage selection. It's something I do more for fun, honestly. But the way I source it is I will travel just like outside of Toronto to small towns, and I'll go to thrift stores or vintage stores in those smaller towns because I find they have the good stuff. Also, a favorite is the Rose Bowl. That is where I would get a lot of denim from there. I was trying to go once a year, but I would bring it back. Like, it's in LA. Honestly, it's the best thing ever. Like, anyone can go. You buy it's like you can buy tickets to have like a time slot or whatever, but you can find the best stuff. And there are vendors that are like more expensive that are selling actually like antique pieces and stuff. And like there's brand or vintage shops there and stuff too. But you can find people that are more just selling to vintage stores as well. So that's really honestly, you gotta
go. I definitely will. I really like this quote as well that you said, "I want to know what goes on my body, just like I wouldn't want to know what I put inside it." And that left an effect on me, because I'm very careful about the food I eat and it being organic and this, but I never really think about the clothes I'm wearing. But I guess they have an effect on us, whether they have the chemicals or plastic. And yeah, what is your thoughts behind that? Could you talk a little?
So I also try to eat very clean and organic as well. I always wanted to, I honestly was finding that my body wasn't reacting well to the genetically modified food and everything, and it was causing health issues for me. So I really tried to start to look for good ingredients in my food, and honestly, my health did a 180, like a 360. Like, it completely turned it around. I was like, wow, if you take care of your body with healthy ingredients, like, look what happens. And I was like, okay, what about my skin too? Like, for beauty products, And then it kind of transferred to that, and I started using clean beauty, and I saw a transformation in my skin as well. And then I started talking. I have a friend that has her own skincare line, and I was like, you know what? Your skin is the largest body on your organ. What is this doing to our body when we're putting all these chemicals on it? And so I started doing a little research there, and I found this one study where there was a 5-year-old boy who he put on flame retardant pajamas, and 2 days later they found that flame retardant in his urine. So it's like it's actually, your skin is actually absorbing what's on your body, and it's important to know what is going on your body. Not all of the times, I will say, like, not all the times chemicals are bad. Chemicals get a bad rap, but when they're used in the right way, they can be safe. So, but it's just kind of being more aware of that, like, that everything we do to ourselves does have an effect. And sometimes people don't care about the people making their clothes, but when it affects them, then that makes them change as well. So
if it affects them or a family member, then maybe
they think about something that's harder to home a little bit.
Yeah, I understand that. And do you find that since your passion in the sustainable fashion world, has it made you be more conscious about sustainability in other areas of your life, or did they just come hand in hand? And what's a big tip you could give to people that makes a big change, you think?
Yeah, funny enough, it actually started with denim. It's so weird. Like, it actually, like, for me as well, I used to be like a shopaholic. I used to work I used to shop every day. Like, I just did. And when I came aware, I was like, okay, I really need to rein it in. So what I did personally, my switch from fast fashion was to vintage. That was my first step when I learned about the fashion industry in general, but it was denim that I just started researching specifically. And I was like, okay, if denim is like this, then what's happening in the, you know, I was like, what's happening with everything else? So it just started, honestly, I think what it was is I started being more mindful of everything in denim. And just when you switch your mindset to just becoming more mindful in something that you do, it will trickle into other areas of your life as well. Like, for example, an easy one I give is like, when I switched to bringing a reusable water bottle and a reusable coffee mug, and that automatically went into bringing reusable cutlery. And then I started bringing my reusable lunchbox, right? So it just has this trickle effect that you don't really realize. And it's really awesome. But it's like, once you start on that journey, it's easier to get into other areas of your life as well.
No, I'd 100% agree with that. My whole journey from starting my company to suddenly just taking more awareness into everything. And then I spoke to someone on here, Katie Deno, a makeup artist who uses just clean beauty. And then that was now something I've just completely changed my skincare routine, and I'm slowly going to try to change my makeup. But yeah, it is a process where you start looking at everything and you're like, wait, these things need to change too. What are some of the resources you use or websites to keep yourself educated and to write some of the articles you do? Is there places you go to keep learning?
Yeah, my favorite source is Sourcing Journal. That's what it's called. And then honestly, what I do, or what I was doing, like in if we weren't in quarantine, I usually travel to the leading denim trade shows, and there are seminars and panels that happen there with leading industry experts. And that's usually where I gain the knowledge firsthand, because what I was finding that you can't necessarily trust everything you read online. And I wanted to find out for myself what was actually happening. So that's why I made an effort to actually travel to where these conversations were being held, rather than relying on someone else telling the story. But Sourcing Journal, I really love to read. Fashion Revolution is a good one too, for just general fashion information as well. There's a site called Common Objective that is really, really awesome as well. That's a really useful resource. Let's see, Eco Textile News I like as well. Just Style has some good articles.
Amazing.
But Sourcing Journal is my go-to.
Okay, I hadn't heard of it, so I'm definitely going to check it out, and I'll put a link for everyone. And is there any brands that you could speak of that you really love they're doing right now, and they're doing it the right way that you believe that can be done right now?
Yeah, like when you said right now, that's
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's always limitations to what can be done right now. But there's two brands or three brands that I would say I really, really love right now. Mud Jeans, they're really looking at circularity. They're really trying to implement like a circular model into their business. They implemented this kind of Lisa Jeans program, which I find is really cool. So you can actually rent a pair of jeans you have to rent them for at least 1 year, I believe. And then you can rent them for as much longer as you want. But at the end of the year, you can either send them back and then they'll recycle them into new jeans, or you can buy them, or you can continue to rent them as well. So that's a really cool program. And because they are able to take back their jeans, if you did just buy a pair of their jeans as well, you could ship them back to them, and they're going to close that loop, and they're going to recycle them into other products. And they're also using all of the possible sustainable technology available to produce the jeans as well. So I like looking at the brands that are trying to close the loop are great. Another one that is doing that is called Nudie Jeans. And they have this line called Reuse. So what they do is they have a take back program, and they sanitize, clean, and reinvent those kind of jeans with artful mending processes. They have all these really cool, skillful menders and creative people that are actually at the tailor shops and whatnot. So they'll make these pieces of art basically, and they're all one of a kind jeans. But sometimes people even pay more for stuff like that. So it's really cool. It's really cool that you can actually just extend the life of someone's garment that much longer. So keeping garments in use and then trying to close the loop is my favorite way of trying to be as sustainable as possible. And then there's one more called Kings of Indigo, and they're based in Amsterdam. They're honestly just so great at experimenting with the new technology and using the technology available. I always look to them for how a new fiber or new fiber combination or some technology is going to look, because they've most likely tried it. And yeah, that's why I really like them. They're constantly looking for new ways to improve. They're not just stagnant and they're like, okay, we saved this amount of water, I'm not using that chemical anymore, I'm good. So but they're just like always trying to be better.
Yeah. So they're also innovating probably for other people in the industry as well to find new ways. That's awesome. And I love the closing the loop. A lot of people have mentioned that I've interviewed, and it's such an important area of a business. And you do that yourself. You collect.
I did, yeah. So I do. I used to work through the Blue Jeans Go Green program. So I was having to ship all of that to Atlanta, which was honestly just, I found a better, more sustainable way of doing it. So now I will donate all of my scraps and unwanted denim to upcyclers in Toronto or artists in Toronto that will use the denim in their own way. Even sometimes they'll use it for art installations or other products and whatnot too. But it's really cool to see how people use the scraps.
Yeah.
But yeah, closing the loop. Gotta close the loop.
Yeah, such an important part. And you have been nominated for the Rivet 50. And I would, congratulations, first of all. And could you explain to people what that is exactly?
So basically what it is, it's an index of the most influential people in denim. I'm so embarrassed to say. It's a list of basically people that are, I think, I'd say swimming against the tide, and they're trying to make positive changes in the industry rather than just sticking to the status quo. And so it's the change makers that are making positive differences rather than continuing on our traditional ways. So yeah, it's a list of 50 people.
And you're very humble about it, but you can actually vote for you to, is that right? I saw it on your website. You can vote.
Yes, you can.
Everyone can vote, Annie. Just shout out for you. I can see it.
Thank you guys. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. It's pretty surreal, to be honest.
That's awesome. And just ending off the interview, is there anything you would like to leave people with, a leaving piece of advice, or anything you've learned during lockdown?
I learned during lockdown, self-care is important. Just kidding. But yeah, like what I would leave with people is it's just you can't shop your way to sustainability. We really just need to be more mindful, and that's the thing. Everybody asks me, what can I do to be more sustainable? How can I shop more sustainably? If you can't shop a sustainable brand, but you're buying an H&M shirt from their conscious line, and you're going to take really good care of it, and you're not going to throw it out, or you're going to pass it on to someone who else is going to use it well, and it's going to be in the system for a long time, then buy it if you need it. But it's just becoming mindful and being like, okay, do I really need this? Why do I need this? And it's taking care of your garments. The best thing you can do is keep them in the system as long as we can, and use them to the best of their ability. So that's my leaving bit. You can't shop your way to sustainability. Unfortunately, I wish it was that way, but
no, that's really good advice. And can you just tell people, I'll put a link, but where can they find you? What's your Instagram and what is your website?
Yeah, so you can find me at Simply Suzette, and that's Simply Suzzette, and then my website is also simplysuzette.com. So that's where you can find me, and I can message you, and you can message me anytime on DMs if you want to chat anything about denim, or send me an email.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This was so nice. Thank you so much. I'm very appreciative that you're amplifying these voices.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully it'll make some difference.
It will.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.